Hi, welcome to my studio. I'm Linda. I'm a mixed media artist, and for this demonstration, I'll be painting with oil and cold wax medium. I've mixed up my paints with the cold wax. In this video, I am spreading out a layer of Indian yellow with the cold wax medium. I am getting ready to do my sketch work for the landscape painting that I'm painting. I have this concept of water in behind the trees, and there's some cloudy, moody sky, and it's a nice landscape scene that I enjoy, and I wanted to see if I can capture the mood on my cradle wood panel and make a painting of it. So a lot of cold wax artists paint very abstractly, and they're not painting any specific subject matter. So I wanted to show you how I paint representational work, more impressionistic. Starts out very abstract. Just right now, I'm just laying in the basic drawing so that I have an idea where I'm going, and I'm trying to keep it really loose as I go. I installed the horizon line and smudged it out a little bit so that it wouldn't be too hard edged, because it's going to be in the background more. And then now I'm placing in tree shapes and doing this with all transparent colors. So the Indian yellow I used for my base color, just a very thin layer. And now I'm working with transparent orange, which is a darker value of the yellow, similar warm tones. And I am just sketching out these trees and, putting them in, and then you'll see me with the scraper, pushing the paint around and lifting parts. I'm just sort of messing up edges, softening edges. Nothing is perfect. I don't want it to be too perfect so that I'm having to follow my initial plan exactly. Things will change as I continue. So now I've introduced another color, and I believe that was green gold, which is a nice transparent color as well, but it's on the opposite side of the color wheel. So with green being opposite red, and this is almost a red orange, so it'll neutralize the background distant land mass that you see there. And I'm using this as well to start to set up some of the textures of the foliage and leaves that are dancing around the tree shapes in the foreground. I sort of balance that around a little bit, and there'll be more as I proceed. But for now, it's enough just to start marking the perfectness of the smooth panel. And I'm adding little marks. So as I proceed, these little marks and scrapes will actually start to show in my next layers. And it's a nice, very loose way to be able to do your drawing and create the textures. And now I'm adding transparent dark, and this is asphaltum, which is a nice transparent brown type of pigment. Often I'll mix blue into it to cool it, to make it darker. Sometimes right now it's a warm dark because it's also layered with the orange, I'm letting it shine through, and you'll see how there's some areas of the trunks that are red looking or brown. So this is the initial pass of the darks, and it sort of pops the trees into the foreground a bit by adding that dark right away. So I'm setting up a dark value pattern. I'm lifting up some of the dark to change the shape a little bit. So it's kind of freeing when you can put the paint down and then scrape it up or add more on top. There's no such thing as a mistake because you just work with what you've got going there. So I'm now adding some of the an opaque color and it's a light value cool pigment. I believe I'm using radiant blue here. Sometimes I'll mix, some ultramarine blue with some white. Just depends on what you're looking for. This is a nice ready mixed color that I use. And so I'm indicating sky, the base coat of the sky, and I'm leaving some of the yellow shining through because it kind of gives some movement to the sky and is going to set up some nice textures for the leaves that I'm going to be adding to the trees. You'll notice that I've only been using the Messermeister scraper for the whole painting so far. I will be using a few other tools as we proceed, but I rarely use brushes. I sometimes just use a big brush for doing blending, but I can mainly just use this tool to do my whole painting. And by using a tool like this, I've got the flat side that you see me pulling the paint down in both directions, and I can get into narrow areas. And I can also use the pointy end of the, see here, I'm just using the tip to blend the paint around. So you'll see me using it in different ways. And I find it very useful. And I love how you just wipe it off. I put a little bit of baby oil on a shop rag and just wipe it off when I'm done painting. And it's perfectly clean. There's no fumes in my studio because I'm not using the odorless mineral spirits or anything for cleaning brushes. Because most of my tools, as I said, you can just wipe off. In the water portion that I'm reflecting the sky color into the water, I am also leaving some of the yellow peeking through. To me, it adds a little more sparkle. It's a nice little vibration of that orange and blue, yellowy orange and blue. And it just creates a sparkle. I like that kind of vibration. Even though I'm using the full length of my scraper there, it's easy to make a line. And here I'm trying to go along the horizon line, covering up some of the trees, but then I can scrape that out really easily afterwards. And now I'm going more vertically in between the branches. With the opaque, you can cover up areas. And it's like mixing the paint on the painting, because there'll be some mixtures of the red and the brown and the yellow and whatever colors I've already used, some of the green gold that was in there. And it will get mixed just as I keep layering. It creates some unique passages. You can't pre-mix the color and get the same effect. Trying to be painterly as I'm proceeding and not be like give the illusion that there's trees and some foreground. Here I'm balancing some of the dark that's on the left side of the panel with some dark down into this corner. It's a little dark right now, but as I layer, I can minimize some of that, balance it out. It's really play back and forth of lights and darks and shapes that need to be redefined. the landscape, I'm working from a photo that I had taken up at my family's cottage, and looking out across the river, there was a dark band of clouds that was just gorgeous against the fall crispness of the air and the warm leaves. And so that's what inspired this painting, really, was the moody, dark sky. And so I'm using a mixture here of phthalo blue and some white, and blending it with a shop rag. That's one of my other favorite tools. I use it for cleaning up, but I also use it for painting and softening edges. I'm blending some of that blue over top of the orange and brown, and it's creating a more neutral, pushing that land mass into the distance a little bit. And I'll do more of that as well. The lighter blue over top of it to soften a couple areas. And this process, I went back and forth for quite a while, and for the purposes of demonstrations, we cut off quite a bit of my trial and error trying to create the illusion that I wanted. But it's, with the oil and cold wax, it's so forgiving, and you can put something in and paint over it and blend it and try something on for size. And if you don't like it, you just paint over it with another color. And this painting has many layers done that way, where I put it in and I go, oh, well, I like this and I don't like that. So it's easy to change it. Putting this blue on, I've already waited for the layers to dry, so I'm not smudging them in all wet and wet. So the blue part, I should mention that I stopped painting, came back to it the next day to put this blue on. And so I'm using a big soft brush to do some blending, as well as my shop rag. And I'm not disturbing the under layers because I've given it a chance to set up. And it dries, the oil paint mixed with cold wax medium, it speeds up the dry time. So by the next day, it's already touch dry. And, I can go in and put another layer on and not disturb the under layer as much. Unless I'm really aggressive, then I could disturb it. But I'm being very delicate with how I'm doing the blending. This is the only brush that I've used in this painting, was this big soft blending brush. And when I was finished the painting day, same thing, I just put a little baby oil on my clean shop rag and just buffed it into that to wipe it off, and that's all I did to clean it. I store it in a Ziploc bag so it's fairly airtight. So it makes for really easy cleanup. And it conditions the hairs of the brush too, the baby oil. But I make sure I don't use a lot, and I make sure it's almost all gone, so it doesn't, not adding baby oil to my painting. Kind of a slower process as I'm balancing across the composition with this blue. I'm going to want that blue peeking through the trees, because to me that's what the painting was about. It was about that dramatic sky that just vibrated with the fall leaves. And I'm back and forth now. I'm with that same light blue and softening some edges, or sometimes there's some distracting blobs that I've done. So I go in to soften it out again. And here I'm extending the size of that blue pattern because I realize I didn't like the way it was balanced. So notice how it's a bigger shape that goes across. This is a 40-inch panel, 20 inches high by 40. And it just felt like it was too small at the top. And so I'm just making it a little bit more important by dragging it down into, a bigger shape in the water, reflecting, as well as up in the sky. So I went back and forth, like I said, quite a few times to create that feeling that I wanted. It's just a fun puzzle to put together, and you use a little of your intuition to decide, what the painting needs next. There I am dancing a little bit, having some fun. Introducing a different blue that's sort of in the same family, just a lighter value. It's more of a turquoisey color. I wanted to dance that into the water there to make more interest. And so I'm adding it up into the sky as well, because if it's in the water, it's going to be reflected from the sky. So just putting a little bit in to balance that in the composition. I didn't want to just be in an isolated area. I wanted to make it work. More neutral. This is a gray that I had mixed using the colors that I've already used on the painting to create some unity. So it's got some opaqueness to it. It's like a warm gray. Using the phthalo blue. Actually, in the blues, I've used a combination of phthalo blue and ultramarine blue. And a little bit of that orange color as well, a little bit of the asphaltum. It's the same colors that are in the trees, and I just added more asphaltum to strengthen the dark value in the foreground trees on the left. Because by focal area, I'm setting up to be right where I'm painting in on that left side of the painting. Around a third way down the painting, I'm dancing in some leaf shapes now. So I've introduced some green, a dark value green now. And I'm skipping it over top of the orange areas and creating some textures just by tickling it on like you see me doing, trying to create the illusion of the tree leaves, and there's some pine needles in there as well as leaves combination. So the mark making that I did earlier on in the painting process is starting to shine through the subsequent layers, like it's by me just rubbing the scraper over top. It's creating that texture, and it's creating a more 3D effect, making it easy to paint. Plus, my scraper is well trained, so it knows what to do. I give the magic spell at the end of the video. Just kidding. So basically balancing that same color that I used on the left side of the panel over onto the right side of the panel. Adding some light value green on top of the dark to create modeling of form and creating more depth in the layers. I'm still not covering up all the dark that I put in, but if you'll look closely, you'll see this is a lighter green that on top. So now I'm moving to a different area. I'm not done with the trees, but I'm moving back into the water to work the light value pattern that was reflecting on the water. It gives a chance for the green that I worked on to set up before I do more work. So I don't just finish one area on the painting and move to the next. I kind of work the whole painting as I go and try to balance each new color or, what the things that I'm doing. So that way the painting progresses in all areas, not just in one area. I'm going back with with the palette knife, and I'm adding some more darks and creating a little bit more drama into the tree, the leaf shapes. And I'm not covering up all the colors that I did before. Some of them will be covered up and some will still be in between the other colors. And all of that makes for a more interesting painting. It's fun to try different tools, different palette knives, scrapers, whatever tools you can find that create the shapes and the effect that you want. And I'm holding the palette knife fairly flat and just scraping it over top of the previous textures. And like I said before, it does create more depth in the foliage. To cross that value pattern across the trunk and move it across to the left-hand side to create a way to flow the eye and connect my edges of the painting. You don't want it to be like a vignette where, my edges are ignored. I want to connect the value pattern across the whole painting. And where I'm working there, that's where I want my eye to be focused. So I'm making it more important with the contrast between light and dark. Of course, if it's there, I have to move it across to balance the rest of the painting and the trees. I'm noticing that there's this big blank column almost down the middle of the painting. I've connected the left side to the right side of my painting using that dark value pattern and leaf shapes. And now I'm softening a few of the edges so it's not all really dark. It makes it a little bit more easy for the eye to go from one side to the other side and flow. Like I indicated there, I'm doing like a big lazy S pattern across the panel. So now we're getting into some of the final things. I'm doing some twigs and mark making with my roller. This is a rubber roller that's used for printmaking. And I draw with this and add paint add layers of paint with it. There's many things you can do. I do have a course that shows how I work with different tools with oil and cold wax. So have a look at my website, lindabanfalvi.com. And this is the finished painting. And I hope you enjoyed this process. And come back to YouTube, check out my website. I'm also on Instagram. I'd appreciate if you would like and share and comment. All those things make it possible for me to continue making these demonstrations. Thanks. Have fun painting.